It was a quiet, warm afternoon, and Liam was in his backyard, reluctantly helping his mom weed the garden. He had always been a curious boy, and his mind quickly drifted to something more exciting. Digging deeper into the soil with a trowel, he uncovered something unusual, a small, rusty key. The key felt cold even under the sun, and its intricate design caught his eye. Faint engravings ran along its surface, almost like a symbol or initials, but they were too faded to make out clearly. "What's this doing here?" he muttered, his curiosity piqued. He ran inside to show his sister Emma. "Look at this key I found in the garden," he exclaimed, holding it up. Emma barely glanced at it before shrugging. "Probably from an old lock. It's nothing special." But to Liam it didn't feel ordinary. The key seemed significant, like it was meant for him. That night, as he lay in bed, he dreamed of a dark hallway leading to a locked door. The door's engraving matched the one on the key, and it seemed to glow faintly. He woke with a start, clutching the key tightly in his hand, even though he didn't remember bringing it to bed. The next morning, driven by an unexplainable pull, Liam returned to the garden. That's when he saw a small weathered door hidden behind overgrown bushes. It bore the same engraving as the key. Liam stood frozen, staring at the small weathered door hidden among the overgrown bushes. How had he never noticed it before? The door was old and partially buried, its wood warped by time. Faint engravings on its surface mirrored those on the rusty key he had found. A chill ran down his spine, but curiosity overpowered his fear. He pushed aside the tangled vines, revealing more of the door. It had no handle, just a keyhole at its center. His heart pounded as he slid the key from his pocket. Could it really fit? His hands trembled slightly as he inserted the key. It turned smoothly, as if the lock had been waiting for this moment. The door creaked open, revealing a dark, narrow passage. A strange, earthy scent wafted out, mixed with something faintly metallic. Liam hesitated, his flashlight casting long shadows down the tunnel. He called out, half expecting someone, or something, to answer, but the silence was absolute. Summoning his courage, he stepped inside. The tunnel walls were lined with damp stone, and faint scratches etched into them seemed to form patterns or symbols he couldn't decipher. The deeper he went, the colder it became, as if the air itself were alive with an unseen energy. At the end of the passage, Liam found himself in a circular chamber. The room glowed faintly, illuminated by strange crystals embedded in the walls. In the center stood a pedestal with a small lock chest. The same engraving appeared on its surface, confirming that this was connected to the key. As Liam approached the chest, the air seemed to softly, vibrating with anticipation. He reached out, but something in the back of his mind whispered caution. What could be inside? Was this what the key had been leading him to all along? Inside was a glowing orb, small enough to fit in his palm, emitting a soft, pulsating light. It felt warm, almost alive, and the light seemed to respond to his presence, growing brighter as he stared. Beside the orb was an old notebook, its cover faded and worn. Liam carefully lifted the notebook, revealing pages filled with strange diagrams, maps, and handwritten notes in an unfamiliar script. His heart raced as he flipped through the pages. The symbols and drawings seemed ancient, almost otherworldly. One page showed a diagram of the orb labeled with arrows pointing to words he couldn't understand. Another showed what appeared to be a larger map with a marked location that sent a chill through him. It looked like it could be near his house. As Liam held the orb, it began to vibrate faintly, the light pulsing in sync with his heartbeat. He felt a strange connection to it, as though it was alive and aware of him. Suddenly, a whispering sound filled the chamber, faint but unmistakable. It wasn't coming from any one place. It was all around him, an indecipherable murmur that made the hairs on his neck stand up. Panicking, Liam placed the orb back in the chest, silencing the whispers. His breathing slowed, but as unease lingered, the orb wasn't just an object. It was something far more powerful, and it seemed tied to him in ways he couldn't yet understand. He stuffed the notebook into his backpack and carefully closed the chest. As he prepared to leave, a sudden vibration shook the chamber, sending tiny pebbles tumbling from the ceiling. The crystal's glow flickered ominously. Whatever he had done by opening the chest had awakened something, and it wasn't happy. Sitting up, Liam unzipped his bag and carefully pulled out the notebook. The mysterious diagrams and notes seemed even stranger now that he was back in the safety of his backyard. One map in particular caught his attention, a marked location in the woods not far from his house. "What's out there?" he muttered, tracing the path with his finger. The orb, still tucked away in the bag, began to vibrate faintly, almost like it was urging him to move. The whispers from the chamber echoed faintly in his mind, growing louder the longer he sat still. There wasn't fear that pushed Liam to his feet. It was curiosity and the growing sense that this was only the beginning. Before leaving, he tried to tell Emma about what he'd found. You have to see this. It's real," he pleaded, showing her the notebook, but Emma only rolled her eyes. "You've been watching too many movies," so she said, brushing him off. Frustrated but undeterred, Liam grabbed his flashlight and set out toward the woods alone. The forest felt different that day, quieter than usual. Twigs snapped under his feet, and every rustling leaf made him glance over his shoulder. As he followed the map's directions, the orb's glow grew stronger, even through the fabric of his backpack. Finally, Liam reached the spot of clearing surrounded by towering trees. At its center was a stone structure, Half buried and covered in moss, it looked like a pedestal or altar eerily similar to the one in the chamber. Strange symbols were etched along its surface, glowing faintly, just like the orb. As Liam stepped closer, the orb began to softly, as though recognizing the structure. His fingers brushed the top of the pedestal, and suddenly the forest seemed to shift. The air grew colder, and shadows danced unnaturally across the clearing. Something ancient was stirring. As the light spread, the surrounding forest seemed to change. The trees shifted, their bark twisting into shapes that almost looked like faces. The whispers returned louder and clearer, but still in a language Liam couldn't understand. Despite his fear, he couldn't look away. The orb's light wasn't threatening. It felt like it was inviting him, calling him to understand something far greater than himself. The air in the clearing grew heavy, and a glowing portal began to form above the pedestal. Through it, Liam could see flashes of another world. Vast landscapes filled with towering crystalline structures and shimmering rivers that flowed like liquid light. It was beautiful, yet deeply unsettling. Suddenly, the notebook in Liam's hand began to heat up. He flipped it open, and the once indecipherable symbols now rearranged themselves into something he could read. The message was clear. The key bear unlocks not doors, but world. Choose wisely. Liam's heart pounded. Worlds? What did that mean? Before he could think further, the portal pulsed, and something began to emerge. At first, it was just a faint shadow, but as it stepped into the clearing, Liam realized it wasn't human. It was tall and otherworldly, with glowing eyes and a presence that made the air with energy. The figure raised a hand, and the orb responded, its light dimming slightly. Then it spoke, not in words, but directly into Liam's mind. It asked a question, though the exact meaning was hard to grasp. What it wanted was clear. A choice: to step through the portal and embrace the unknown, or to turn back and leave the orb behind. Liam stood frozen, the glowing portal swirling with light and shadow before him. The figure's unspoken question echoed in his mind. Would he step through? His heart raced as he glanced back toward the forest, but the way he had come was now shrouded in darkness. There was no turning back, or so it seemed. Summoning every ounce of courage, Liam stepped closer to the portal. The figure tilted its head slightly, as if observing him with both curiosity and caution. "Why me?" Liam whispered, unsure if he was even being heard, but there was no answer, just a steady of energy filling the air. With trembling hands, he reached toward the portal. The moment his fingers brushed its surface, a surge of warmth rushed through him, and the world around him dissolved into a blur of colors. For a brief moment, he felt weightless, as though he was floating through time itself. When the light faded, Liam found himself standing on solid ground. But this was no forest. Towering crystalline structures glimmered in the distance, and a vast sky filled with two suns cast a golden hue over the landscape. The air felt alive, buzzing faintly with unseen energy. He turned around and saw the portal behind him, still open but flickering, as if unstable. The figure had followed him, now standing silently nearby. That raised its hand and pointed toward a large spire in the distance. In his mind, Liam heard a faint but urgent message. The answers lie there, but beware, others seek the key bearer. Others? William asked aloud, but the figure didn't respond. Before he could press for more, the portal behind him collapsed with a loud crack, leaving him stranded in this strange new world. His chest tightened, but he clenched his fists. He had come this far. There was no backing out now. The journey toward the spire was unlike anything Liam had ever imagined. The ground beneath his feet shimmered faintly, as though tiny veins of light pulsed through it. Strange bird-like creatures with glowing feathers flitted across the golden sky, their cries echoing softly. Yet the beauty of this world was undercut by a gnawing tension. Liam couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched. As he trudged on, he noticed markings etched into the crystalline rocks scattered across the terrain. They resembled the symbols from the notebook, and Liam paused to study them. Was someone leaving a trail, or was it a warning? Just as he bent down to examine one, a loud crack echoed in the distance. Spinning around, Liam spotted movement on the horizon. Shadows, tall humanoid figures, moved in unison, their forms distorted and flickering, as if they didn't belong entirely to this world. His pulse quickened. Were they the others the figure had warned about? Before Liam could act, the orb inside his backpack began to again. Its light pulsed rapidly, and the air around him grew heavy. Suddenly a glowing barrier formed around him. Just as the shadowy figures came into view, they halted, their distorted faces turning toward the barrier, their hollow eyes gleaming with menace. One of them stepped forward, raising a jagged staff that crackled with energy. The barrier trembled under its power, but the orb seemed to fight back, its light growing brighter. Then, without warning, the shadows retreated, disappearing into the horizon. Liam's legs nearly gave out, but the orb dimmed again, as though reassuring him. Taking a shaky breath, he pressed onward. The spire loomed closer now, its surface shimmering like liquid glass. Liam realized that it wasn't just a structure. It was alive, pulsating in rhythm with the orb. As he approached, the orb's light began to resonate with the spire, and a hidden entrance revealed itself, glowing faintly. Inside the spire, Liam felt as though he had entered another realm entirely. The wall shimmered like liquid crystal, casting soft, shifting lights across the space. The air was charged with energy, humming faintly in his ears. Ahead of him, a narrow pathway wound upward, spiraling toward the heart of the structure. The orb in his bag pulsed again, its light synchronizing with the rhythm of the spire. As Liam climbed, symbols began to appear along the walls, glowing faintly. They shifted and rearranged as he passed, almost like they were alive. He stopped to touch one, and immediately a memory, not his own, flooded his mind. A battle between beings of light and shadow, their powers clashing in an endless war. The vision left him reeling. This wasn't just about him, and the orb was tied to something ancient and far-reaching. At the top of the path, Liam entered a grand chamber. In its center stood a pedestal much like the one in the forest, but larger and more intricate. The orb floated out of his bag on its own, settling onto the pedestal. Instantly, the room came alive. Lights danced across the walls, and a deep voice echoed in his mind. The key bearer has arrived. The balance must be restored. Suddenly, the wall shifted, revealing 3 large gateways, each pulsed with a different color, one blue, one red, and one green. The voice spoke again, instructing Liam to choose a path. Each represented a different trial. Courage, wisdom, or sacrifice. Failure would mean losing the orb, and possibly himself. Forever, Liam's pulse quickened as he stared at the gateways. He knew this was the final step in understanding the orb's purpose, but which path should he take? The choice wasn't just about him. It would determine the fate of this strange, beautiful world. Liam stepped forward, his heart pounding as the gateway before him shimmered with an intense, almost magnetic force. He had chosen the path of courage, knowing that this trial would test everything he was. His strength, his resolve, and his will to face the unknown. The moment his foot crossed the threshold, the world around him twisted, the ground beneath his feet vanishing into nothingness. He was plunged into a swirling vortex of light and shadow. When the swirling stopped, Liam found himself in a vast, darkened cavern. The walls were jagged and raw, and a cold wind howled through the space. In the center of the cavern stood a towering figure, its eyes glowing like fiery embers. It was a creature of pure darkness, a manifestation of every fear and doubt Liam had ever felt. The creature spoke in a low, rumbling voice, its words filled with disdain. You are not worthy of the orb, key-bearer. You lack the strength to wield it. Liam's knees trembled, but he stood his ground. The orb, still pulsing with energy in his chest, seemed to resonate with his defiance. It wasn't just the creature's presence that shook him. It was his own self-doubt, the fear that had followed him for so long. But in that moment, Liam realized the truth. Courage wasn't the absence of fear, it was facing it head-on. Drawing on every ounce of strength, he stepped toward the creature, his voice steady despite the fear gnawing at him. I am worthy, I will not turn back, the creature hissed, but before it could strike, the orb flared brightly, pushing the darkness back. The cavern trembled, and the figure vanished into a mist.